For centuries, power has sought refuge underground. Hitler died in a bunker beneath Berlin. Saddam Hussein was pulled from a hole in the ground outside Tikrit. Bin Laden hid behind compound walls in Abbottabad. And each time, the lesson seemed clear. Go deep enough, build thick enough walls, and you can survive anything. Iran took that lesson seriously. Over decades, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps constructed a network of underground facilities so extensive that Western analysts compared it to a parallel country beneath the country. Command centers buried under mountains, missile arsenals hidden inside tunnels, and at the apex of it all, a command bunker built specifically to keep the supreme leader alive during the worst-case scenario. Multiple hardened layers. Blast doors rated to withstand direct nuclear overpressure. An independent power grid. Air filtration systems designed to neutralize chemical agents. Enough food, water, and communications infrastructure to sustain operations for weeks. This was not just a shelter. It was a statement. A $2 billion message to Washington and Tel Aviv that said, "You cannot reach us here." By sunrise, Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei was dead. The bunker had not saved him. It had trapped him. And the question that changed everything is not how many bombs it took to break through. The question is, how did they know exactly where to send them? A bunker is only as secure as its secrecy. No matter how deep you dig, no matter how thick the concrete, a facility that can be precisely located, structurally mapped, and operationally profiled is no longer a sanctuary. It is a fixed target. Months before Operation Epic Fury began, Western intelligence services had been doing exactly that. The CIA and Mossad had been building a targeting package on the Leadership Command Complex, the primary hardened facility believed to house Khamenei's emergency command node. Through a combination of satellite imagery, signals intelligence, and, critically, human sources embedded within Iran's own construction and engineering sectors. The same approach used in the lead-up to covert operations against other high-value facilities had been applied here at a scale and depth that Iran's counterintelligence services never fully detected. What they were mapping was not just the surface footprint. They were mapping the facility's interior geometry, the shaft angles, the chamber dimensions, the load-bearing walls. They were identifying the ventilation intake points, the narrow pipes that bring fresh air from the surface into any sealed underground structure and that represent a permanent physical connection to the outside world. They were tracing the power conduits that ran from backup generators down into the command levels. They were cataloging the telecommunications infrastructure, the fiber and radio relay systems that gave the bunker its ability to communicate and that also, in turn, gave the bunker away. A facility that operates is a facility that can be found. By the time the strike package was finalized, intelligence analysts had built what one source described as a three-dimensional architectural model of the target, accurate to within meters. Every critical node had been identified and prioritized. Every hardened door had a corresponding weapon assigned to it. The bunker's designers had planned for brute force. They had not planned for this. There is a common misconception about how bunker-busting weapons work. Most people imagine a massive bomb that simply punches through concrete like a fist through drywall. The reality is far more precise and far more lethal. The primary munitions used against the Leadership Command Complex on February 28 were variants of the GBU-57 Massive Ordnance Penetrator, a 30,000-pound weapon carried exclusively by the B-2 Spirit stealth bomber. At over 6 meters in length, it is the largest non-nuclear bomb in the American arsenal, designed from the ground up to defeat exactly the kind of target Iran had built. Its physics are straightforward and brutal. The weapon's hardened steel casing allows it to sustain the impact of penetrating through successive layers of reinforced concrete, up to 60 meters of it, before the payload detonates. The key is the delayed fuse system. The bomb does not explode on contact. It bores through, layer after layer, absorbing the resistance of the earth, riding a precisely calculated deceleration profile until it reaches the programmed depth, the depth at which intelligence analysts determined the main command chamber sat. Only then does the fuse trigger. The result is not an explosion that scatters force in all directions. It is an explosion that is contained, for a fraction of a second, inside a sealed concrete structure, concentrating overpressure into a pulse that no engineering specification on Earth can absorb. Against this, Iran's blast doors and reinforced walls were not protection. They were amplifiers. In addition to the MOP, the strike package included Israeli Spice, 2,000 precision glide bombs targeting surface ventilation infrastructure, power relay stations, and communications nodes, systematically stripping the facility of its ability to function even before the primary penetrators arrived. By the time the deep penetrating munitions hit, the facility was already blind, partially depowered, and isolated. The physical strike was the last act of an operation that had begun weeks earlier in a domain where there are no explosions, no satellite imagery, and no visible damage. Modern hardened facilities depend on digital systems for nearly everything that keeps them functional: air circulation, temperature regulation, backup power sequencing, internal communications, access control. Strip away the concrete and blast doors, and what you have at the core of any advanced bunker is a network, a system of interconnected computers and controllers that make the facility inhabitable. That network is a vulnerability. American and Israeli cyber warfare units, building on years of offensive operations against Iranian infrastructure, including the Stuxnet campaign that destroyed uranium centrifuges in the early 2010s, had developed the capability to penetrate and preposition inside Iran's most critical digital systems. The operational concept, applied previously in less publicized operations against hardened facilities elsewhere, is straightforward. You do not need to physically breach a bunker if you can make the bunker uninhabitable before the strike arrives. In the hours before Operation Epic Fury began, malware prepositioned inside the facility's control systems activated. The evidence, drawn from post-strike assessments and signals intercepts, points to disruptions in the ventilation management systems, causing temperature and air pressure irregularities inside the command levels. Backup communication channels were selectively jammed, not all at once, but in a sequence designed to create confusion and delay response coordination. The people inside were not simply waiting out a strike. They were dealing with a facility that was already failing around them. A bunker that cannot be reliably operated is not a fortress. It is a sealed room. What happened beneath Tehran on the morning of February 28, 2026 was not simply the death of one man. It was the end of an era. For the better part of a century, the construction of hardened underground facilities has been the fallback strategy of governments that anticipated being targeted by superior conventional military power. The logic was sound. Depth in concrete absorb explosive force, and if you go deep enough, you become unreachable. It was the logic that drove the construction of NORAD's Cheyenne Mountain Complex, the Kremlin's Yamantau facility, and Iran's own vast subterranean network. That logic has now been empirically defeated. The combination of persistent intelligence collection, precision penetrating munitions, and offensive cyber operations has effectively closed the margin of safety that hardened facilities once offered. The three pillars of a bunker's protective value: secrecy of location, structural resistance to force, and operational independence, can now each be systematically dismantled before a single physical strike lands. You cannot hide a facility that must operate. You cannot shield concrete from a weapon designed to defeat it. And you cannot maintain command when your digital infrastructure has already been turned against you. The implications extend far beyond Iran. Every head of state, military commander, or political leader who has relied on an underground facility as their ultimate contingency is now watching what happened to Khamenei and asking the same question. If a $2 billion, multi-layer hardened command complex could not protect him. What exactly does protect someone? The honest answer, for the first time in modern military history, may be nothing permanent, nothing fixed, nothing that can be found, profiled, and targeted, which means everything buried in the earth. Iran's designers built the perfect bunker for the threats of the 20th century. They never built a defense against the 21st.